in a trial should happen. And then I reply, as the court pleases, my lord, and that was that. So, my lord, it shows clearly here, and I remember that day vividly. When the court asked me of the reasons, we had just completed a witness and Mr. Mboto was about to take the stand. And as I was putting the reasons, I mixed the versions of accused number 1 and 2 up, and they called me at the back. And as I'm trying to put the reasons, the court says, okay, I'm writing now, and they're calling me back, and I'm doing up and down until this interaction with the court happens. But the following day, that's when I come and say, I want to crystallize our objections, because yesterday they were never put. So to say that what we have put here is the only thing that we put on the day, and we never wanted to put anything further. This passage contradicts that, because I wanted to put the objections in a clearer form, because we went overnight. I consulted. I came back in the morning. I said, can I put? The court says, no. I've ruled that the trial within the trial should happen. You will object within the context of the evidence that is led. And my lord, I submit with respect. That's exactly what happened, because from then, I briefed and instructed Mr. Mgomezulu to come and proceed and assist me with the trial within the trial. And on Monday, it was the turn of Magistrate Cronje to testify. And before Magistrate Cronje testified, and every other witness that came and testified in this court, Mr. Mgomezulu will be asked by the court for the reasons for objecting to the admissibility of those statements. And the reasons were put to those witnesses. And those reasons included even the constitutional reason that Mr. Baloyi says it was belatedly added in our objections. Now, with that elephant out of the room, my lord, I want us to go through the heads of arguments, and I'd like to apologize to the court for two reasons. One, I see that they are not paginated, they go according to paragraphs, and also, my lord, because of the speed with which they were compiled, there are gremlins that have crept in terms of spelling errors and the like. Now, with respect to the admissibility of Exhibit FF, which will be my paragraph 6, my lord, regarding accused number 1, the objection as was raised, especially in this passage that Mr. Baloyi relied on, indeed does not contain the constitutional ground. And I'd like to put that frankly before this court, but the explanation has been proffered for the reason thereof. Now, the reason for the objection, as was constellated during the trial, my lord, for the admissibility of Exhibit FF for accused number 1 is that the statement was not obtained freely and voluntarily, since the accused person, accused number 1, was assaulted by the police officers who investigated this case. He was threatened with further assaults that should he not sign the pre-prepared statement that was handed to him at Diepkloof by Colonel Mboto, then further assaults will be perpetrated on him. And also, he testified that he was not informed of his constitutional rights from the morning or the day he met Sergeant Mohola at Tembisa, together with Sadiki and Buthelezi, throughout the duration of the day until he is presented at Colonel Rapadu at 21:45 on the 30th of May 2020 in Diepkloof, SAPS. Now, I'm not going to go over the facts regarding the arrest. Suffice also to say, my lord, that accused number 1 disputes the evidence of Mohola and Buthelezi that the police officers that were involved in thank you, my lord. I was just being reminded that I tend to mix Rapadu and Mboto, so I'll be conscious to be aware what I'm talking about here. He disputes that he was arrested by 3 officers, namely Mohola, Buthelezi, and Sadiki. According to the testimony that he proffered in court is that he was arrested by a large contingent of EMPD SWAT officers in uniform and other police officers in civilian clothing, which he estimated to have been perhaps 8 uniformed and 5 civilian clothed police officers. And the ones that he later came to know their names are Mohola, Sadiki, Buthelezi, Mapumulo, Monaring, Mabena, and Mwamani.
Sorry. Is it a factual statement that he was arrested by 13 police?
It is not factual. That is testimony, my lord. We don't have records to show.
No, just want to. Normally, there should be an arresting officer. You can bring the whole army.
Yes.
But there's an arresting officer. So if there are 13 police, are they all arresting officers? That's all I'm asking.
They all descended on the scene, but it will.
Are they all arresting officers?
I'm coming to that, my lord. It will look like, according to the testimony of Mohola, she was the arresting officer.
Okay, and according to your client?
According to my client, the person that actually affected the arrest was Mapumulo.
Okay, fine.
And then also, my lord, he disputes that there were only 2 cars, the one driven by Buthelezi and the one that was driven by Mohola. He estimates that there may have been at least 7 cars involved. Now, all the police officers who are involved with the arrest of accused number 1 denied that he was assaulted, and they maintained that stance in the evidence given in court. Now, accused number 1 testified that he was assaulted at Letabong in Tembisa shortly after his arrest. He was then taken to Fosleras next to a municipality building that houses the court, the police station, and other offices. And further, he was assaulted at Diepkloof. Like I said, my lord, I'm not going to traverse those facts. They are in record. Now we come to Exhibit FF, which is a document labeled Confession and Admission. And it's the document, the pro forma that we have looked at, and the annexure that still has to come, should it come, that was completed by Colonel Mboto. Now that pro forma is Exhibit FF, and it has certain preliminary questions that the commissioned officers must go through with the deponent or the suspect. And amongst those questions, at question 3 is whether or not the deponent has been assaulted or threatened, to which the accused number 1 answered in the negative. Now, question 7.1, statement to any police, to any person in respect of this incident. The answer is yes, to the police who arrested me. And then 7.2, if so, to whom, when, and under what circumstances? The answer is under normal circumstances. And then 7.3, why do you wish to repeat the statement? The answer, they told me not to talk in details. They will arrange somebody else to obtain the statement who is not participating in the investigation. Now, my lord, what then is my issue here is that at 7.2, the answer that is given to whom have you given the statement, under what, when, and under what circumstances? The reply thereto is under normal circumstances. I submit, my Lord, what the question wanted was the background to how the statement was made to those officers. Where, when, and under what circumstances. And my submission is that Colonel Mboto does not pursue this question further because it's an ambiguous question. He does not elicit what normal conditions the accused is referring to, because contextually, if you say under normal circumstances, it's vague. We submit. And this question, in my view, required Mboto to ask what happened between the police officers that this statement was previously given to. What happened between them and accused number one in order for accused number one to have agreed to this process of him brought before Colonel Mboto. Now, in further elaboration of this, my Lord, and it's a concern that we see regularly when we are involved in matters that involve trials within a trials and admissibility and denials of statements being made, is that prior to a suspect being brought before a commissioned officer, this question will be asked and it will be noted. But then the problem is that when the commissioned officer makes his own statement, it appears on the statement of the commissioned officer that this is a spontaneous answer that was given to me. It has never been given to anyone else. Whereas this answer was elicited before during interrogations that do not form this part, that are not disclosed to that commissioned officer. That, by the way, I was interrogated first by Mohola at Vusimuzi Hostel at the gate, according to her, which is disputed by accused number one. I was then taken to Litabong, interrogated under coercive circumstances where I was assaulted in the following manner. I was then taken from there to Fosco Ras, where I was further interrogated by Brigadier Gininda in the confines of a car, where I've waited for him for 3 hours in handcuffs that were injuring my wrist. I was swollen. So those circumstances, when you look at this answer, it says normal circumstances, so nothing happened because circumstances. Those we submit, my Lord, are not normal circumstances. And this is not a spontaneous answer that is given for the first time to the commissioned officer. It's been given to other people under, as we submit, under very coercive circumstances. And also this answer in 7.3, it creates an air of suspicion that accused number one was told what to say at Mboto. And I repeat the answer again. He says, they told me not to talk in details. They will arrange somebody else to obtain the statement who is not participating in the investigation. There's an air out there, my Lord, of suspicion that what we are told by Brigadier Gininda, that without much ado, you say to accused number one, I've got a reason that you are a person of interest. And accused number one says, yes, I've always wanted to take the monkey off my back without anything further. We submit that cannot be, my Lord. Now, at 6.11 of my heads, my Lord, we say question 6 deals with whether the accused person had any injuries, if so, of what nature, to which the accused answered as follows. Yes, in both arms I have marks due to the handcuffs that were very tight. And the observation by 6.12 by Colonel Mboto was as follows. I noticed the marks on both hands, and I even loosened the clips of the handcuffs. And further, my Lord, there's a section where Colonel Mboto, with regard to these injuries, he says, when asked about the nature of the injuries that he saw, he said, I saw red dots of blood and a little bit of swelling on the wrist of accused number 1. Now, my Lord, let's take it into context to show how improbable that is. The injuries that Mboto says minimizes by saying there were little drops of blood, a little bit of swelling. Accused number 1 is arrested in Tembisa at around 1:30 on the 30th of May, 1:30 p.m. on the 30th of May 2020. There and then he's handcuffed, and the police officers make sure from then that the handcuffs are tightly squeezed around the wrist of accused number 1. At the time he is presented to Mboto at 21:45 p.m. on the 30th, he has been in those tightly squeezed handcuffs for 8 hours plus. And there's a reason why Mboto says, I loosen them up. He's a police officer. You can see these handcuffs are causing injury, harm, damage to accused number 1. So my submission is that Colonel Mboto, as a police officer, he's minimizing the injuries that he actually observed, because accused number 1 says, my hands were swollen and I was bleeding from my hands. It was not a little bit, it was not little bits of droplets of blood. And my Lord, I'm going to ask the court to take judicial notice of jurisprudence that emanates from the UN regarding the use of handcuffs as a means of torture. And literature says the prolonged use of handcuffs and other restraints is a means of torture. Accused number 1 says, in Tembisa, when I was arrested, made to lie down twice, first time, Mapumulo lifts and leverages me up with the handcuffs that are tightly squeezed. I don't have to be accused number 1 to imagine the excruciating pain when your body is only leveraged. You are lifted up with the handcuffs at your back. And that happened at Tembisa, according to accused number 1, twice, because first time, all 3 of them, the 2 gentlemen that he was with, they were made to lay down. Then they picked accused number 1 up. Who are you? I'm Muzi Sibia. I'm from Kwamatabatini. Lay him down. Pick these ones up. They are not restrained. Whatever happened to them happens to them. He goes on the ground for the second time again. He's leveraged, lifted up with those handcuffs, with his hands at the back. So from there, assault and torture, in this manner, it is my submission, my Lord, begins. Now, as they testify, both accused number 1 and 2 kept on showing the respective interpreters that to this day, I still have marks around my wrists. Now, if we minimize that to what Advocate Baloyi said on Friday, that the marks that were there were tantamount to a mark left by a watch, a strap of a watch. I'm wondering, my Lord, what watches are they making? With, remember, the makeup, my Lord, of the handcuffs. They've got these parts, these serrated parts. They are double layered, these bracelets, double layered, hollow inside. Whenever they are squeezed, my Lord, a number of things will happen. I'm not a medical expert, but any stretch of imagination.
But you are testifying to that now.
The court will take judicial notice, which is common sense.
But you are not arguing that when he was lifted in his cuffs, it was intended to induce him to make a confession.
No.
I've never heard any one of you saying that.
No.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with the making of the statement, but I said from this moment on, the assault starts, because you are softening up your target for later.
Fine.
Now, also, my Lord, if now, according to Sergeant Mohol, and having heard that he's cooperating, he is going to make a statement, then, my lord, it won't make sense that you still keep him on with those handcuffs still tightly squeezed. You loosen them up because now he's working with you. Why will they still be kept tightly squeezed even then?
Was it ever put to Sergeant Mohola, Mohano, Utelezi, Munaring, that you purposefully tightened the handcuffs on accused number 1 and 2? I'm not sure which one. Number 1, in order to torture him and in order to perpetrate an assault. Was it ever put?
That was never put, my lord.
Yeah.
We'll concede to that ready.
It was never put. Fine, let's go on.
Yes. Now, also, my lord, this issue of the injuries to the wrists, then it proceeds. Where does it go? It goes to the OBs that were Exhibit NN, in particular, Pretoria North, in the morning, 1:40 a.m., when accused number, not Pretoria North, I'm sorry, my lord, Valeria, SAPS, when accused number 1 is booked. Because now, the cell master will see when the handcuffs are removed from accused number 1, and whether the injuries that he sees have got to do with the assault for the statement or the injury by themselves. These are the injuries that somebody who removes the handcuffs, who takes somebody to the cells, will find hard to miss, my lord. So the entry in Exhibit NN that says accused number 1 is received without visible injuries cannot be true, my lord. How can you miss those injuries on the wrist where you remove the handcuffs? Because somebody doesn't go to the cells with the handcuffs. How will you miss that? How will you not note that? Now, the evidence of accused number 1 is that on all 3 occasions where he was assaulted, be it Letabong, Fosloras, and Diproof SAPS, the main mode of assault was a clear plastic bag covering his face, nose, mouth, up to the neck level so that he can. And, my lord, also, the court will berate me that I'm not a medical expert, but with all due respect, my lord, what sort of visible injuries would we expect to see from a plastic bag pulled over somebody's face? And what sort of injuries would we see?
He was kicked by 13 men, remember? He was kicked and assaulted, choked, tubed, etc., etc., etc.
My lord, with respect, I think during Mr. Mgomezulu's leading of accused number 1, the court vividly asked, who assaulted you? And the names that accused number 1 mentioned, and offhand, they don't come to me, but I remember he mentioned Mohola, Butelezi, and he never intimated that all 13 participated in the assault. He said they were present. We all drove to Litabo. We all drove to Fosloras.
Okay,
but he
fine.
doesn't intimate.
But at least it's more than 1.
At least it's more than 1.
Okay, fine. Let's go on.
My lord, I also submit that it will be pure speculation and conjecture in the absence of a J88 detailing the injuries, because only a medical expert will detail the injuries that were perpetrated to an accused person who was assaulted in the manner that he alleges. So my submission is that it will be speculation. We don't know how he was kicked, where he was kicked.
Well, we know he was kicked with booted feet, for instance.
But the pressure, how those kicks were, we don't know.
He was kicked all over his body.
Yes. My body was sore all over after this incident, and also whatever feelings he had from the suffocation.
Sorry, this submission about the J88, what does it concern?
Sorry, my lord.
The J88, you're saying it is only through the agency of a J88 that you can establish what sort of injuries a person sustained.
Yes, my lord.
Is that the law?
My lord, in terms of detailing the injuries to a suspect or a victim, what I know in South Africa is that the person gets taken to a doctor who completes the
Yeah.
J88.
Yes, it must be taken to a doctor
Yes,
after laying a complaint at least.
yes,
Normally,
yes,
because that's the commencement of criminal proceedings.
yes.
Yeah. Mokotling says, Ramosepi kicked me, choked me, etc., etc., and I intend laying a complaint.
Yes,
Then the police are going to say to you, fine, make your statement. Thereafter, they take you to the district surgeon or a doctor
yes,
in a hospital.
yes. Yeah, that's the procedure, my lord.
Yes.
Indeed so.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, also, my lord, we just briefly touch on what, I'm not sure about his rank, Mr. Swanepulu testified in this court about the procedures pertaining to the reporting if there's a complaint of assault or any other abuse, maltreatment of the conditions in which you were caught. My lord, my submission is simply this. The national instruction speaks about an ideal. We are talking about reality. We are talking about South Africa 2023-24. This is not an ideal, according to book.
That's a serious statement.
My lord, I'll say this with all due respect.
No, but you're referring to all police
No,
in
no,
South
no.
Africa.
Okay,
You're saying this
I'll
is not,
confine.
in 2023, police never use those directives by Sonepol. That's basically your submission.
I'll confine
Because
myself to this
we're
case.
in a different era.
Yes. I'll confine myself to this case and I'll show by an
Counter-distinction.
example. Yes.
When police murdered Steve Biko, they used to use this directive, for instance. Is that so?
I don't know when this directive was publicized. I don't know even whether human rights were applicable as to the conditions
Yeah,
of
we know
your cell
apartheid
and
was
whatever.
bad, terrible, but there were certain minimum standards applicable.
Unfortunately, I've
That's
never,
why there are the judges' rules.
Yes.
These were formulated in 2014. Is that so, Mr.?
Yes, I think 19...
Sorry,
31, if I'm not-
1940,
31.
1931.
Yes.
Every policeman had to know the judge's rules. And if you go through the judge's rules,
Yes.
they talk about these unlawful acts of assaulting, torturing suspects and detainees and arrestees.
Yes, madam.
1931. Okay, let's proceed, sir.
Thank you, my lord. I mean, that's it. Now, my lord, also the gravamen of the state's complaint against the allegations of assault by accused number 1 and 2 in particular are that no reports were made to Ed Villaria when he was booked in and at the first court appearance in Tembisa and the like. Now, with respect to Villaria, under the evidence in chief, accused number 1 testified that, in fact, in the morning, he did report to an officer that the persons that brought him, i.e., Mohola Buthelezi and the company that brought accused number 1 in the early hours of the morning, had assaulted him. And that police officer said, okay, I'll go to the registers and check who brought you. And upon perusing the registers, he comes back to accused number 1 and says, listen, this is the National Court Case Unit. Those people that brought you here are far more superior or senior than me, and I'm paraphrasing there, my lord, so I cannot help you. And the other, I've briefly touched on that one, my lord, regarding the J88 is that both suspects, accused number 1 and 2 respectively, showed no visible injuries. We've canvassed that with respect to the procedure that must have been followed, the complaint taken to the doctor, district surgeon, and examination J88 completed. But I'm saying even that, my lord, flies in the face by the fact that at least the injuries to the wrists were so visible that a diligent police officer booking accused number 1 and 2 into the cells or out will notice that, my lord, as the court pleases. For example, my lord, Colonel Mboto says if accused number 1 was brought to him and he says he was assaulted at those 3 places that I've mentioned, the police officers are fit people, he could have made it at this place with an ambulance. Now, my lord, that's a curious statement to make as a police officer. Tacitly, what is he saying? Is he saying we assault but we are sophisticated, we don't do something like this? What is he saying?
No, tacitly he's saying he was never assaulted. That's the only inference you can draw from that remark.
My point is different. Tacitly,
okay, fine.
Yes, he's saying we can assault but we do a better job than this. We don't assault people to a pulp. Now, my lord, we are at a point now where accused number 1 is now interviewed by Colonel Brigadier Gininda at Foslo Ras, and having spoken to him, and he forms an opinion that what accused number 1 is telling him is something amounting to confessions, he says, to the team of Mohola that was supposed to go to the hospital with accused number 1 that there's been change of plans. We are going to Deep Kloof now, to Colonel, not even Deep Kloof, my lord. He says, I'm going to make arrangements for accused number 1 to see an independent person to take a statement from them. Now, my lord, accused number 1 has testified that he was never taken to Ereton, as the police officers allege. They took him straight to Deep Kloof, where the assaults perpetrated upon him, especially the plastic bag tubing, continued until he agreed to sign the document that was presented to him by Colonel Mboto. Now, my lord, that aspect of Mboto, we've covered it with those paragraphs at the beginning. But what is of essence is that, according to his testimony, accused number 1 says, as they